Canada has the second largest Arctic airspace on Earth, and right now, we can't watch most of it in real time. That's not a technical oversight, that's a sovereignty problem. Every year, foreign aircraft, drones, and vessels move closer to the Canadian Arctic, and our response still depends on a handful of manned patrolled aircraft and interceptor jets flying hundreds or even thousands of kilometers just to get eyes on target. This affects our security, our leverage with allies, and yes, your wallet. Today, I want to talk about a different approach. Artificial intelligence piloted, unmanned aerial vehicles designed specifically to guard Arctic airspaces. What they are, how they work, and why they could fundamentally change how Canada defends its north. Before we start, though, I have my friend from BC asked me, is that a picture behind me? Well, no, that's my backyard. When COVID hit, I moved to the country with my wife and my dogs because we were able to work remotely. And as a digital transformation consultant, I'm still able to work remotely. So this is great. And we get to play outside. I'm your host, Pierre Shields, and this is North of MAGA. Let's get into it. Why this matters. The basic problem is simple. Canada can't continuously monitor its Arctic airspace with traditional aircraft alone. The distances are too large, the weather is too extreme, and manned patrols are too expensive to fly at the scale that persistent coverage requires. What makes this worse is that the issue is often misframed as a future concern. It isn't. Foreign military aircraft already operate near Canadian Arctic approaches. Unidentified tracks happen more often than most people realize. And climate change is opening new transit routes that make northern access easier every year. If nothing changes, Canada loses three things. First, we lose situational awareness. We simply don't see what's happening in our own airspace often enough. Second, we lose credibility. Allies take your sovereignty claims more seriously when you can actually enforce them. Third, we lose money. Scrambling manned jets for routine monitoring burns millions in fuel, maintenance, and pilot hours that were never designed for that role. Most Arctic-capable countries are moving toward persistent, unmanned surveillance layers. Canada is still acting like the only answer is more manned flights. Structural context. Canada's Arctic defense system wasn't built for continuous monitoring. It was built for intermittent presence and reaction. We rely on long-range patrol aircraft, satellite coverage with gaps, and NORAD intercepts when something crosses a threshold serious enough to justify scrambling jets. That system benefits a few groups. It benefits legacy defense procurement pipelines that prioritize crewed platforms. It benefits industrial systems optimized for large, expensive aircraft programs. But the cost is absorbed elsewhere, I guess. Taxpayers pay more per hour of coverage. Pilots and crews get stretched thin. And Canada's Arctic communities still don't see meaningful infrastructure or response capability growth tied to airspace monitoring. We shouldn't be working harder. We should be working smarter. Here's the key comparison. Countries like Norway, which has far less territory than Canada, already integrate unmanned systems for Arctic and maritime surveillance because they understand that persistence matters more than prestige platforms. So here's the question most Canadians already agree with, even if they haven't phrased it this way. Why are we using gold-plated aircraft to do a job that requires endurance, not dogfighting? Option 1, AI-piloted Arctic UAVs. The first option is deploying AI-piloted, long-endurance UAVs designed for Arctic operations. These systems don't require runways. They can launch vertically from ships, remote outposts, or even mobile platforms. A real-world example of this class is Shield AI's XBAT, an AI-piloted vertical takeoff or landing fighter-style drone that operates using autonomous decision-making software rather than remote control. This option exists because autonomy has matured. AI pilots can now navigate, respond to threats, reroute, and continue missions even when communications are degraded. The core problem it solves is persistent presence. These drones can stay aloft for long periods, operate in brutal conditions, and monitor vast areas without risking human life. What it doesn't solve is everything. They don't replace manned fighters for interception, they don't conduct diplomacy, and they don't remove the need for satellites. The real-world consequence is concrete. Canada could gain 24/7 Arctic coverage at a fraction of the cost per flight hour, while creating skilled jobs in autonomous systems, data analysis, and Arctic operations support. Option 2, integrated UAVs plus a NORAD layer. The second option isn't standalone drones. It's integrating Arctic UAVs directly into NORAD's command structure. This approach is different because it treats drones as early warning and tracking assets, not independent systems. The main obstacle here is political and regulatory, of course. Autonomous aircraft raise questions about rules of engagement, data ownership, and cross-border command authority. But there's a major economic and unity benefit. Canadian-built or Canadian-operated UAV fleets strengthen domestic defense industry capacity while reinforcing Canada's role inside NORAD rather than reducing it. Here's what people get wrong about this option, though. They assume autonomy weakens human control. In reality, it shifts humans to higher value decision-making, while machines handle endurance, pattern recognition, and constant monitoring. The uncomfortable option. Now, this is the part that people are kind of afraid of. Skynet and all. Full autonomy scares people. The uncomfortable option is allowing AI pilots to operate with limited onboard decision authority in communication-denied environments. It's avoided because it raises ethical and political concerns. It's controversial because it challenges long-standing assumptions about manned oversight. But the strategic upside goes beyond economics. In the Arctic, communications can fail. Satellites get blocked. Weather disrupts links. An autonomous system that can continue operating independently protects Canadian airspace even when everything else goes quiet. The honest limitation is risk. Autonomy must be tightly constrained, tested, and governed. Absolutely. This isn't about handing war over to machines. It's about ensuring coverage doesn't disappear when humans lose connectivity. This part matters. Honestly, I've worked with information systems for over 30 years. There's an exponential curve in the development and the progression of systems. I'm not sure where we are in that exponential curve now, but I think we're starting to get up on a high, fast-moving part. AI is about to surpass our best pilots and strategists. What we need to do is train these systems properly. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have an autonomous driving car. And your driving car, you are one person in the autonomous car, and for some reason there was ice and the car goes out of control. Nobody's fault, not the AI's fault. And there's a parade. So the car is about to plow into a parade and kill tons of people, or it could throw itself off a cliff and just kill you. Now, it's my autonomous car. So have I programmed it to save me and kill everybody in the parade? Or is the AI trained to save as many lives as possible? These ethical questions need to be answered sometime. The problem I see is that most politicians have no idea how a computer works, have no idea what AI is about. The Secretary of Education in the States called it A1 for a while. Oh my God. And these are the people that are going to be making decisions on these systems. Yeah, so scary, not scary, I'm not sure. Synthesis and big picture. These options aren't mutually exclusive. Canada can deploy Arctic UAVs, integrate them with NORAD, and cautiously expand autonomous authority at the same time. The transformation isn't just technological, it's structural. Canada stops being a country that occasionally watches its Arctic and becomes one that permanently knows what's happening there. This ties directly to sovereignty, leverage, and resilience. This isn't a left versus right thing, Republican versus Democrat, liberal versus conservative. It's geography versus reality. Large territories require persistent systems, not symbolic gestures. Conclusion. This isn't about drones replacing pilots. It's about Canada finally matching its Arctic defense posture to the size and importance of the territory it claims. So here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. Should Arctic airspace defense prioritize presence or prestige? Yeah, again, I know what you're going to say. If this helps clarify how sovereignty actually works in the North, consider subscribing and sharing. This really helps me out, and I want to be able to put as much energy as possible into making these videos and maybe giving a different perspective. This has been Pierre Shields for North of MAGA. Go play outside.